Hello, everyone. Test, test. Can people hear me? Test, test. Can you say in the chat? You can. Test, 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 test. Test, test. Yeah, pretty well. Weird. Everyone, test, test. Can everyone hear me? Test, test. Feel free to put in the chat if you can hear me. We'll start in about 10 minutes. Thank you for joining. It's weird, right? Well, joining. Hello, everyone. Testing, testing. Just want to make sure people can hear me. If you could drop in the chat that you could hear me, that'd be great. See you raise your hand. I mean, yes. Hey, Brian, how are you?
So, Alex, am I in just the audience link?
All right, thank you for that. Chat, as I say, we'll see if I can. Hello, Brian.
Hey, Alex,
Can you
am
hear
I
me?
in the audience link?
Can't hear you. Testing, testing. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Good. I can.
Yeah.
Recording in progress.
Got a lot of people joining. This is good.
I don't think. Good afternoon.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, thank you for joining us.
Oh, happy to be here. I'm Kelly Turturro from DEC.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for joining us. Kelly, we'll just wait a few more minutes, get everyone involved. Again, people are joining now. Should be a good group. I appreciate mine. Oh, and by the way, my name is Alex. I'm with Hudson Gateway Association of Realtors. Um,
Nice to
sorry,
meet you,
saw your name in a
Alex.
bunch of emails. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah. I just wanted to join a little bit early, just in case I had any technical difficulties.
Well, we very greatly appreciate that.
Hi, Brian. All right, so I'll go on mute until we're ready to get going.
Yeah, 1 second.
Hey there, can you hear me?
We can. Hello.
Alex,
Good.
can you rename Pete?
I can rename Pete.
Hey, Kelly.
Good afternoon, Senator. How are you?
Good. You're on there as Sylvie Sherlock.
Oh, look at that.
My former legislative director. So you're in good company.
Oh my gosh, I didn't know that.
Oh, you didn't know that? Yes, we love Sejdi.
No. Oh, she's a wonderful addition to DEC.
Good, good.
Hello, everyone.
Hi there. How are you?
Good
Good.
afternoon.
How are you?
Good, thank you. Hey, Alex.
Hi. Oh, I just changed the wrong. Sorry, 1 second.
I can do that. I can
You can
change it.
rename yourself. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, and then Brian, you rename yourself.
Yeah, sorry. I just renamed. I just made you the senator, Brian.
Where change name tag? Here we go.
I'm just gonna step away 1 second. We have a good group. Let's wait a few more minutes. Just have the Assemblyman's office join us. Hello, Assemblyman. Everything okay? Well, let's see. 1 second.
My name is not changing.
1 second. Let me.
No, it won't let me change it. Can you change it?
Let me see if I can change it, Senator. 1 second. Let's get Matt in. Matt is joining us. What? Good. Okay. Cool.
You should be able to change it if you hit the three little buttons on the top by where your picture is on
No,
the
I know
screen.
that. I know that.
It's showing it for me.
Yeah, and it says change name tag. I changed it to Senator Pete Harckham. I hit apply, and it stays
See,
as
all
Brian.
right. I think
You
I
can
got it
actually
for you.
hit rename, which should be right above it, as
I
opposed
think
to
I got
change
it.
name tag.
Everyone,
Hello.
a lot of people are joining, so I'm going to keep giving them a few minutes, and then we'll probably get started promptly at 3:30. Appreciate everyone coming in and checking in. This is good. 1 second. I'm just going to mute myself.
Afternoon, everybody.
How you doing, Matt?
Doing great, sir. How are you?
Good. I'm up in frigid Albany.
I could tell. God bless you. I'm trying to stay away as long as I can.
Someone has to be.
Hey, Matt, how are
Hey,
you?
Laura, how are you?
I'm good. How about yourself?
Doing great, thank you. Doing great. Hey, Brian. Kelly, how are you?
Good, Matt. Good to see you.
Yep. Can you get my door?
We have
Thanks.
another Sylvie Sherlock. Popular name today.
I'm guessing this is Rob.
That's Rob.
Hello,
Hey, Rob, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Hello, Rob.
Rob, you can rename yourself.
Oh, look at that. Yeah. All right, give me just a moment.
Hello, everyone. We'll get started in probably 1 minute. We have about 40 people on, so that's
Great.
very exciting that people have been joining. They're still joining. So thank you very much for sticking with us with this one as this important issue. But we'll get started in a few minutes. Really 1 minute, just as people keep coming in. So as you know, as you probably got information at a message, this will be recorded. We have some people that want to listen to this like a podcast, so we'll be doing that in the future. If people are still joining. All right. Okay, it is 3:30. We have a good group of people. People are still joining, but I think they'll catch up when we get started. So we'll start. My name is Alex Roithmere. I have the pleasure of being the Government Affairs Director for the Hudson Gateway Association of Realtors. Before I pass things on to our president, Vlora, just wanted to say this is in presenter mode. So if you want to say something, put a question in the ask question in the chat or in the Q&A would probably be the best way to do that. We will be sending a copy of this recording out to everyone who participated. And without further ado, I just want to thank everyone for joining on this Tuesday afternoon. And take it away, Vlora, our president. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex, and welcome everyone. We really appreciate you taking the time to join us today. I know right before the holidays, everybody's pretty busy. But this discussion is timely because New York State has implemented major updates to its freshwater wetlands law, the most significant changes in decades, and many homeowners, municipalities, professionals are really trying to understand what those changes actually mean in practice. And today's goal is really education and clarity. We want to help translate what's happening in Albany into what it means in your own backyard. I'm grateful to be joined by Senator Pete Harckham, Assemblyman Matt Slater, and representatives from the Department of Environmental Conservation, including Regional Director Kelly Turturro, please forgive me if I said that wrong, and Assistant Regional Attorney Rob O'Connor. Thank you all for being here. So at a high level, New York's updated wetlands law expands how freshwater wetlands are identified and regulated. Instead of relying primarily on the old maps we used, DEC now makes jurisdictional determinations on a parcel by parcel basis. The intent of the law is to strengthen environmental protections, including water quality and flood mitigation, but it also introduces new processes that affect property owners, municipalities, and really anyone who's involved in land use or development. Today's format is pretty straightforward. We're going to begin with brief remarks from our legislative leaders to provide context on why the law was changed. Then we'll hear from DEC on how the law and regulations are being implemented, followed by a moderated discussion. We'll reserve time at the end for audience questions. So as Alex said, please submit your questions in the chat or the Q&A, and we'll work to cover a range of both practical and policy level questions at the end. We will start with State Senator Harckham. Would you like to begin? Give us some background.
Thank you very much, Vlora. And Alex, thank you very much. And Matt, thank you so much. And your whole fine team, and Kelly and Rob from DEC and the whole team there. So welcome everybody. Thank you to the Hudson Gateway for scheduling this timely discussion. I think you're right. It's about education. Folks need to know how the rubber meets the road. And I just want to provide a little context. I was the principal sponsor of the bill that created the new wetlands regulations in the Senate. And I want to just sort of let folks know why we did this. I mean, the environmental community has been trying to update the wetlands maps for years and years and years. And so we have, the backdrop is that in New York State, we have lost 60% of the wetlands that were naturally there. And when I say lost, generally lost through some form of development, agriculture. They've been lost to some sort of man-made use. Well, why is that important? An acre of wetlands absorbs 1 million acres of stormwater, which is 1 million gallons of stormwater, excuse me, which is incredibly critical. You know, if we look at central and southern Westchester, why are we constantly flooding? One of the major reasons is because our wetlands structure that used to hold that water and then slowly release it back into the Sawmill River, the Hutchinson River, the Bronx River, those natural retention ponds are no longer there. And so the stormwater is flowing directly into those water bodies. And the further south it gets, it just can't accommodate the volume. So number one, it's really important for flooding and stormwater control. Number two, our wetlands filter out impurities and nutrients, things like phosphorus, things like nitrogen. So if you look at what's happening in the northern part of the county, Putnam County and Dutchess County, particularly in the New York City watershed, we are under heightened requirements now to remove phosphorus from the stormwater. So our municipalities are spending literally millions of dollars a year to essentially recreate the wetlands that did this naturally, that we've destroyed, and that we now have to serve the same function through man-made means. So one thing that we know very simply in both the environmental movement and in government, it costs a lot less to preserve natural resources than it does to fix and remediate. So that's essentially why we did the legislation. The original proposal would have been much stricter. As Wara said, we're going to the initial existing maps were 12 and a half acres. Now it's down to 7.5 acres. The original proposal was much, much tighter. It would have gone to anything over an acre. And this was a good old-fashioned compromise that the governor's team had one level, we in the legislature had another level, and we just literally compromised in the middle. And that's how we arrived on that figure. So it's probably too many for some, not enough for others, but that's what we do in government. We have to compromise. So this is about stormwater protection, flooding, removing nutrients, and being cost effective and proactive upfront, maintaining the natural infrastructure we have rather than spending millions of dollars to recreate that. So again, thank you for having me. Thank you for having this discussion. And with that, happy to turn it over to my colleague and my partner in government, Assemblymember Matt Slater.
Thank you,
Thank you very
Senator.
much.
Thank you, Senator. Again, good afternoon, everybody. Matt Slater from the 94th Assembly District. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today to discuss this important matter. Just to reemphasize some of the things that the Senator had said, I think we all recognize the importance that wetlands play in all of our communities. And I used to sit as a town supervisor on the East of Hudson Watershed Board. And so to the Senator's point, yes, our municipalities are spending an awful lot of money these days based on mandates in order to recreate the resources needed to filter the water that goes into our watershed and ultimately into our water supply. This issue came about before I reached the legislature. And so this is something that I've been learning about during my tenure since entering the state assembly. But I think it's important for us to have an educational conversation so that we understand the implementation of it. The law is passed. This is what we're dealing with. And I'm thankful for our partners at DEC for coming just to educate us on implementation. And that's what I think we get the most questions on. I've heard from both local officials, like in the town of Carmel, on projects and the impact that this may have on municipal projects. I've also heard from homeowners who've raised similar questions because their investments in their property has changed due to the changing of the law and these new maps. And so it really, I think, raised questions that we wanted to hear from the experts on, the experts being our partners at DEC. I think it's important from our standpoint, but also from all those attending to understand how DEC is taking the law and implementing it so that we have clarity and understanding moving forward. Because I think one of the worst things that happens in government is when we get caught off guard by whether it's unintended consequences or misunderstanding of how things are being applied. And so my hope is, in working with Vlora and her great team and Alex, that this is going to provide clarity and understanding how the law is going to be impacting whether it's your property or your community. This gives you that hopefully that level of clarity from DEC standpoint, from an implementation perspective. And so I really am excited to learn as much as the rest of us who are on this call how DEC intends to implement it. And I think it's going to be very informative for all of us involved. And so I do want to thank everyone involved for organizing this. I know we've tried this a couple of times. Alex has been very flexible in accommodating our schedule, as has Vlora. But we thought it was really, really important for the senator to be on because he provides that historical context about how this legislation came to be, but also, and most importantly, DEC, so they can provide their expertise as well. And I am being crashed here by my youngest constituent, my daughter Elizabeth, who just came off the bus. But with that, I want to turn it over to our partners at DEC so that they can provide the context that we're all looking forward to hearing. and appreciate everyone taking time today to join us.
Thank you, Assembly Member. I am Kelly Turturro. I am the Regional Director for DEC's Hudson Valley office, and I'm here today with other DEC representatives, including Rob O'Connor, who is an Assistant Regional Attorney in our office, and Brian Drum, who runs our Wetlands team here in the Hudson Valley office. And today, as Senator Harckham and Assembly Member Slater mentioned to you, we're going to talk about the changes to the freshwater wetlands law and the new regulations that were put in place that implement that law. And I just want to echo how thankful we are to be invited to this conversation. Throughout 2025, we have spent a lot of time talking about the new regulations and making sure that our constituents understand what the changes are and put faces to names. So if you have questions, you know who to reach out to, whether it be your state elected officials who work with us on a regular basis or reaching directly out to DEC. It's really important for us to be out in front of the community, answering questions and available to you to answer those questions. So as you've learned, in 2022, the New York State Legislature amended the freshwater wetlands law, requiring DEC to modernize our freshwater wetlands regulations relating to DEC's jurisdiction over freshwater wetlands. Those new regulations went into effect on January 1st, 2025, and DEC has spent this year implementing those regulations. So, as I mentioned before, educating our constituents and working to implement processes that streamline how we determine what wetlands we have jurisdiction over. So, in other words, what wetlands and projects require a permit from DEC. So, at the end of the day, DEC will regulate more freshwater wetlands, but I do want everyone to know that our process for permitting will remain the same. You will still work with DEC through the permitting process, through both our permitting team as well as our wetlands staff, and we are here to assist you through that process. I wanted to provide a little bit of an introduction, but I do want to turn it over now to Rob O'Connor, who will provide a lot more detail on the regulations and how we are implementing those regulations. Rob?
All right, thanks, Kelly. Hope everybody can hear me. I'm gonna mute just for a second while I get set up here. I'm gonna open up my PowerPoint. I've prepared a few slides to discuss, and I'm gonna start sharing my screen in just a moment, okay? You're probably seeing two moose right now. That's not the presentation, but that'll be up in just a sec.
So, a little secret about Rob, he is an amazing wildlife photographer, and I think we probably just saw one of your pictures. Is that right, Rob?
Yeah, that was earlier this month, out in Wyoming. Thanks, Kelly. Thanks for the plug. Appreciate that. All right, so to the business of the day. So I'm going to provide kind of an overview of what we're going to discuss here today. First and foremost, why protecting wetlands is important, the statutory changes, DEC's new jurisdictional determination process, some of the substance of the new regulations, including wetlands of unusual importance, which I'll get to a little bit later. The criteria and process, I should say, for extending the adjacent area around regulated wetlands. We're going to leave some time for questions, and then I have some links and available resources that I can share with you guys. So why protect wetlands? Senator Harckham very eloquently provided some details on that. Wetlands provide a hub for biodiversity. They provide erosion protection. And one of the more important aspects is that they provide flood protection through their water storage capacity. The stated policy in the Freshwater Wetlands Act, going back to 1975, is to preserve, protect, and conserve freshwater wetlands and their benefits, consistent with the general welfare and beneficial economic, social, and agricultural development of the state. So prior to 2025, freshwater wetlands that were 12.4 acres or more were regulated by DEC. They had to be promulgated and published on jurisdictional maps as required by the statute. DEC staff, developers, property owners, home buyers, and many other folks would consult the maps to assess DEC's jurisdiction. Even under the pre-2025 version of the statute, delineations, though, were still necessary to determine the precise boundary of a wetland. It wasn't just enough to rely on the map solely. Here's kind of an example of that. So this is kind of a screenshot of what it looked like when DEC would generate the freshwater wetland maps. As you can see, it's quite literally somebody tracing the perceived boundary of a wetland over an aerial image. Which would result in the published version of the map, which you're seeing here. So the Freshwater Wetlands Act was originally adopted in 1975. It was later amended in 2022. So effective January 1st, 2025, jurisdiction's no longer tied to those maps that I had showed you. Currently, the threshold is still 12.4 acres. That's going to change in 2028 to 7.4 acres. And then we also currently regulate wetlands of unusual importance regardless of their size. And I'll get into some of the details about wetlands of unusual importance a little later on. So as I said earlier, the jurisdictional determination process has changed for DEC, where we once relied on freshwater wetlands maps to determine jurisdiction. Now we're looking at jurisdiction parcel to parcel. So there's 3 steps. The first step is to determine whether a parcel or a property contains regulated wetlands. We call this the parcel jurisdictional determination. Step 2 is to determine the extent of the wetlands on the parcel or the property, and that involves an on-site freshwater wetlands delineation. Step 3 is to determine if a project requires an Article 24 permit. We call that a project jurisdictional determination. So for the parcel JD, we have an online form that is available to the public where you can submit a request to DEC to conduct a remote online jurisdictional determination. And this is available to property owners as well as prospective buyers. So if you're interested in purchasing a property, you could request a jurisdictional determination to kind of see what the extent of freshwater wetlands jurisdiction might be on the property. After that request is made, a requester is notified and they're provided with a negative or positive letter of jurisdiction. And that jurisdictional determination is valid then for 5 years. This is just a screenshot of what that form looks like. It's on DEC's website. I'm going to provide a link to it towards the end of this presentation. I think it's pretty user-friendly. It includes some drop-downs and some basic information that DEC staff need in order to make a determination on a particular parcel. So after you've made your request, DEC will issue you a letter of either positive or negative jurisdiction. This is kind of a sample of what that letter would look like when you receive it. This just happens to be a positive jurisdictional determination. There's some language up at the top of it, but really this box here is the critical piece. This is going to show you where, this is going to show you the applicable regulatory criteria that applies to that freshwater wetland, including the classification, which then DEC uses to determine the applicable permitting standards, should a permit be necessary. So if you've requested a jurisdictional determination online, DEC has 90 days to issue that JD. If you don't hear back from DEC within those 90 days, the requester may send a 10-day notice letter via certified mail to DEC, and then DEC has 10 days to respond to that letter. If DEC fails to respond to that letter, wetland jurisdiction is then waived for 5 years. Step 2, as I said earlier, of the jurisdictional determination process includes a delineation. And this is optional. You could get a positive jurisdictional determination from that online process that I described and choose not to request a delineation. But if you have a project in mind, it might make sense to request a delineation from DEC so that you can understand the extent of the wetland boundary on your property. So wetland delineations, like I said, are include an an on-site site inspection. They're available with permission of a property owner at no fee. They typically begin in the spring. Regional Bureau of Habitat will conduct an on-site visit. They'll identify wetland indicators, flag the wetland boundary, and they can answer questions that you might have about the wetland or about the process. So as I said earlier, the parcel jurisdictional determination involves an online desktop review conducted by DEC staff at central office. Because that's off-site, it is possible that we could get something wrong. And in that case, a property owner who's received a positive parcel jurisdictional determination and a delineation, they have the option under the new regs to appeal that decision to DEC. So you must have what's called an initial consultation with DEC, which is where we come out to the site, we take another look at the wetland. Again, it's another opportunity for us to answer some questions you might have about the jurisdictional determination or about the delineation that was conducted. After that initial consultation, if a property owner wishes to proceed to a jurisdictional determination appeal, they can do that within 120 days of the initial consultation. And the basis for an appeal are missing technical information, incorrect application of DEC's jurisdictional criteria, or incorrect application of delineation guidance. DEC then has 60 days to respond to that appeal. So let's say you get your positive parcel JD and you have a project that you'd like to pursue for your parcel. The next step would be to request a project jurisdictional determination. And the purpose of this is to determine whether or not a permit's going to be required for proposed work within or proposed activity within a property that contains jurisdictional freshwater wetlands. So you submit your project plans to DEC, that includes the delineation. DEC then reviews that material, and property owner or the project sponsor is notified as to whether or not a freshwater wetlands permit is required for their proposed activity. Similar to the parcel JD, there's a 90-day time frame for the project JD as well. Just a moment to discuss another component to the JD process that's for kind of more larger or complex projects. If a project sponsor or a property owner has a wetlands consultant that they've hired, they can actually have that consultant follow DEC standard operating procedures for determining jurisdiction, and they can do that desktop analysis themselves. And they can evaluate whether there are any jurisdictional wetlands on the parcel. They can classify those wetlands. They could also conduct that delineation as well. They can then submit that information to regional wetland staff for validation. During that process, our staff might request changes before they validate, but ultimately, the purpose of this consultant option is to allow project sponsors through their consultant to kind of have more control over that 90-day timeline. That way they can get to a project JD and ultimately, if necessary, a freshwater wetlands application much more quickly than if they were to go through the 90-day process with central office. So one of the provisions that DEC included in the new regulations are a transition period for projects that are or that were kind of in the pipeline right before the regulations became effective on January 1st. So there's a transition period of 2 to 3.5 years, depending on the project and certain circumstances, during which time the new jurisdictional criteria does not need to be considered for the project. The transition period applies to projects meeting any one of the following criteria. If they received a DEC wetlands permit or notice of complete application prior to January 1st, a final environmental impact statement, or a negative declaration under seeker for a type 1 or unlisted action. the third criteria is site plan approval by a municipality. So if a project meets any of these criteria, they have either 2 to 3.5 years to continue without having to get a JD under the new program. So I mentioned earlier that in the jurisdictional determination process, DEC also identifies the applicable classification, and that's based on the type of wetland, as well as some of the other criteria that we've got in the regulations. Class is determined based on remotely identifiable characteristics during the parcel JD. New classification criteria was added to the regulations to account for the new wetlands of unusual importance, which we're going to get to in just a moment. As I said earlier, class is important because it's used to determine the appropriate permitting standards in our regulations at 663.5. So freshwater wetlands was redefined in the statute, and it was also redefined in DEC's new regulations to include wetlands that are less than 12.4 acres, but are of unusual importance because they meet certain criteria. There are 11 criteria. I'm going to kind of walk through 2 that I think are probably most relevant to the Hudson Valley, and that includes wetlands that are in urban areas as designated by the U.S. Census Bureau, and then those wetlands that are in watersheds that experience significant flooding. So this is a map depicting those urban areas defined by the U.S. Census Bureau. More or less, DEC essentially carried over the language from the statute and implemented it into the new freshwater wetlands regulations. And I think this gives a pretty good visual of where those urban areas are going to exist. As you can see, they kind of track closely with where our major cities are in the state. For the significant flooding criteria, this is a little more complicated. A freshwater wetland that's located in a 12-digit HUC. And for those who don't know, HUC is a hydrological unit code developed by the United States, USGS, to identify and classify certain watersheds. So think like zip codes kind of applied to watersheds across the state. In order to be jurisdictional, a wetland in a 12-digit HUC, a wetland must be in a 12-digit HUC that has 2% or more impervious surface coverage to account for flooding. Less than 5% of its surface area is comprised of floodwater storage, and it must be located in an urban area or within 4 kilometers of an urban area. So just to give you some visuals, this is factor 1. So these are HUCs that have 2% or more impervious surface coverage. Factor 2, these are HUCs that have less than 5% surface area that is comprised of floodwater storage. And factor 3, these are HUCs that are within 4 kilometers of an urban area or are within an urban area itself. And when you combine the 3, this is wetlands within these areas shaded in purple or pink, depending on how it's coming through on your end. Wetlands, regardless of size, will be jurisdictional to DEC. So the ECL establishes a standard 100-foot regulated buffer area around all freshwater wetlands. That's not new. That's something that DEC has been implementing since the beginning of the freshwater wetlands program. However, the statute also provides that a greater distance from any such wetland may be regulated by the department where necessary to protect and preserve the wetland. And in the new regulations, DEC decided to kind of define the scope of when the adjacent area to a wetland would be extended. And it applies in 2 pretty narrow circumstances. So the first is nutrient poor wetlands. And the second is for vernal pools productive for amphibian breeding. And those vernal pools are one of the 11 unusual importance criteria. And just to kind of give you a sense of how that's going to work in practice, the language in the regulations provide DEC with some flexibility when it comes to extending the adjacent area. So the distance and arrangement is going to be based on an individual analysis of the site and the environmental conditions that are present. So as a visual aid, you'll see that there's a productive vernal pool right in the center. There's forest on the left and some farm field on the right. Just hypothetically speaking, if DEC were looking at something like this, we wouldn't necessarily put an extended adjacent area surrounding the entire vernal pool. I'm not saying that we wouldn't, but we would consider things like the fact that there's a farm field adjacent to the wetland as well. especially if it's active. Along with the regulations, DEC is still in the process of adopting various general permits, many of which have already been adopted for things like community scale solar energy, electric utility right-of-way maintenance, natural gas utility right-of-way maintenance, housing development. That one is still being considered. I think the comment period ended last week for that. Lakes and shorelines, management of invasive species, which is also still under consideration, and then stream crossings for timber harvesting. We'll get back to questions in a moment, but before I do, I've got some links and available resources that are currently on DEC's website. I can work with the team at Gateway to make sure that the folks on this call get a copy of these links. That way they can make use of them. And that's all I have.
Thank you. That was definitely very informative. I do have a couple of questions based on what you were saying. One of them is you mentioned that the site visits would start in the spring. Is there a time period during the year in which they're done?
Kelly or Brian, I don't know if you want to take that one. I don't have the specific time frames applicable
Yeah,
for that.
I can do that. Hi, I'm Brian Drum, and I work with the Bureau of Habitat, and so we are the people that do the technical review for freshwater wetland permitting, including the site visits, which oftentimes include delineations or validations of wetland delineations done by consultants. So if you look outside right now, we're still got snow cover up here in New Paltz, and I'm pretty sure you guys do wherever we are in New York right now. So one of the primary things that we utilize to determine the wetland boundary are the plants, and we look at the plant communities and for changes in the plant communities. Some plants like to grow in wetlands, some plants grow in upland areas, and so we find that where those plant communities change. So if we have a lot of snow cover, then we're not able to actually see the plants. If the ground's frozen, we can't get and look at the soil because we do need to confirm that there's hydric soil, and we also need to look for the presence of water and hydrology. So sometimes, not always, sometimes we can, depending on topography and other circumstances, you still do wetland delineations or validations when there's snow on the ground. But in general, if we can't see the plants and we can't see the ground, then we have to hold off until springtime to do that. So so this year we got snow a little bit earlier, so there's some sites we might not be able to do already. But other sites occasionally we're still able to do in the winter.
Thank you. That makes sense. Just I was only asking because I know a lot of people, if they do need to apply for a permit, they want to know how long is that process going to take. And obviously, if there's snow on the ground, it sounds like it would take a little bit longer, depending on the time.
And it's not. It's it's not a definite. We try not to, in cases where we can still perform wetland delineation, or also kind of depending on what the what activity is being proposed. We can also take a look at, maybe just using aerial photographs and taking it's like, say, the edge of somebody's yard. We know that we can see that on an aerial photograph. We can kind of see that in person. We could do that in the winter time. So somebody that's looking to put in a deck or a pool for the springtime doesn't need to wait the spring and get in line with all the other people.
Okay, thank you. My next question is really in regards to the rollout so far this year, and I guess Kelly, that might go to you. Have you noticed an uptick from last year in the number of applicants?
So it definitely, from the perspective of the new regulations going into effect as of January 1st of this year, we have seen an uptick in jurisdictional determination requests. So the parcel determination requests that Rob has talked about earlier. And I think that's the nature of the new regulations, the expanded DEC jurisdiction over wetlands, and people curious about where our jurisdiction lies in terms of wetlands. Rob, did you have anything else to add to that?
No, the only thing, so the question was about applicants. I will say, there've been plenty of jurisdictional determination requests. I think we've received agency-wide about 8,000 of them since the year began. So we're making plenty of progress on that.
Now, how does that compare, would you say, to, your average year before this passed in terms of requests or really just inquiries coming in? And I realize the process is different from years past, but that seems like a lot, 8,000.
Well, that figure is statewide. Brian, from your perspective generally, for region, and Brian can speak to the Hudson Valley area, prior to the new regulations, could you ballpark the amount of jurisdictional determinations that we would have done?
So actually, I have pulled numbers like that together, but it was a little while ago, so they're not right fresh on the top of my head. This year we have, as of the beginning of, it was back probably the end of October, I think. We had gone on 330 site visits within our region. And on a typical year, there's a lot of variation in that, depending on the economy and if there's any significant storm events. That is just a little bit higher than we had done the previous year. But again, not way out of the range of normal variation. I think that is right now we're still in that transition period too, where people have are fall covered by the exemptions. Somebody got a building permit from their town already, or they have they got a neg deck for a project. Those are they don't need a permit right now, so we're still a lot of things are falling under those exclusions, or I forget, Rob, exactly what they're called. Not grandfathering, please.
Transitional, yeah.
Transitional, yeah. So we're seeing an increase in questions, a lot of uncertainty. So we have a lot of questions coming to us about it from people that are realize the processes have changed, and so
Okay.
I feel like in the years to come, when the transitional period's over and the wetland acreage goes down, we'll probably have more. We have our region. Kelly Turturro has been very supportive of our bureau and has helped us to get to hire more biologists. We actually have hired in the last year and a half, 2 years. We've got 3 new biologists on, 4 biologists over the last 4 years. So we've been working up to this so that we could handle the additional workload.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you. You mentioned municipalities, and I guess my next question is really, what do you think the biggest challenge the municipalities are going to face?
Sure, Kelly, I could take that one. So I think some of the questions that we've received from municipalities, especially those who have freshwater wetland protection ordinances on the books, or who regulate freshwater wetlands, is kind of where they fit in to this process. And I guess the answer that we've been providing is that essentially it hasn't changed. To some extent, right? If you are in a municipality and you have a project, it might be that you need a permit from DEC and from the municipality as well. But that was the same before the changes, and it's currently that way now, right? So there's concurrent jurisdiction between municipalities and DEC. Another thing to add to that too is, municipalities who are serving as seeker lead agencies over projects, they might need to, or even ones who are just reviewing, site plans, they might have to coordinate with the applicant to make sure that, they're checking that box by reaching out to DEC for that jurisdictional determination if there's wetlands on the parcel. That way they can figure out if they need a DEC permit as well. So those are the two things I think I would identify.
Okay, thank you. One more question for me, and then I'm going to go to the questions from the audience. There's a lot of information today. Rob, you were really thorough. But if you had to sum up, what does this mean for the average homeowner, these changes?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think, for the average homeowner, if you are planning to maybe expand the footprint of your home, maybe put in a new deck or a pool or something else, if you're in an area, when it's clear that there's wetlands on the parcel, definitely reach out to DEC. But if you're unsure, I would also encourage you to reach out for that parcel jurisdictional determination. I think the earlier that homeowners coordinate or engage with DEC on that, the better, their project will be served, ultimately. And we have a lot of resources on our website that will help them through that process as well.
And Rob, can I just add to that? I think everybody's got to kind of remember that existing uses of existing land uses can continue, right? So if somebody has a lawn that they've been mowing, and maybe that lawn, like in the previous example, kind of goes up to the edge of the wetland, maybe within 100 feet of the wetland now and be in the regulated area, they don't need to get a permit from us to continue mowing their lawn. They can mow their lawn. They can paint their house. They can replace the windows. It's really kind of, if we're disturbing the ground or clearing vegetation, that people should come to us to see if they need a permit. Ordinary maintenance, you're filling some potholes, the municipality's filling potholes in the road, or a homeowner is doing that in their driveway, then that wouldn't require a permit. But if they are changing the footprint of that infrastructure, that would require a permit.
Thank you. I'm going to go through the questions, and actually the first one is a comment. It's from Lisbeth, who wanted to thank Senator Harckham for his continued defense of the important ecosystems and environmental protection in general. And the next one is from Ethan, and he asks, the filtering of water function the municipalities are spending so much to do, am I right to assume that's something that's being done to drinking water?
Yes, that's correct. A lot of this stems from phosphorus, which contributes to harmful algal blooms, eutrophication, blue-green algae, which makes drinking water unpotable or very expensive to make potable. Some of this has to do with the fact that we're in the New York City watershed, but a lot of folks in Westchester get their drinking water from those reservoirs as well. And so one of the natural functions of wetlands is to absorb phosphorus and nitrogen. And the money that we discuss in municipalities, and Assemblymember Slater referred to his direct work on this, is now under the enhanced MS4 permits. These municipalities are addressing excess phosphorus in stormwater runoff, and we're essentially building through mechanical means structures to do the same functions that our natural wetlands used to do before some of them were destroyed.
Thank you. The next question is there any difference between freshwater wetlands and saltwater wetlands, for instance, properties in Long Island Sound? This is from Carrie.
I'll let Kelly and the DEC folks answer the differences, but in terms of nutrients In freshwater, phosphorus is a principal nutrient we're concerned about, and in saltwater wetlands, it's nitrogen. But as far as the other differences between the two, I'll let DEC folks answer that one.
Yeah, so what we're talking about today is freshwater wetlands.
The next question is, are current wetlands determinations on one key MLS fields for residential property accurate or subject to change? We don't have anybody from one key here, but I would assume that anything that was wetlands before probably still is, but there are things that are not on there that may be determined to be applicable.
Yeah, Robin, I wrote down your name. I'm going to look like if I can get you a better answer for that in the future. Great question, though.
And the next one is, are streams considered wetlands? How does somebody know if they need to get a JD?
I'll take this one. This is Brian. So streams can also be wetlands, and a lot of times wetlands will have streams running through the middle of them, so there'll be wetland fringes along the sides of streams. So I think how does somebody know if they need to get a JD? If you have that question, then you probably should get a JD.
And we should also add there are certain kinds of streams that have their own protections separate from wetlands protection. So some streams do have protections, other streams don't have protections. It's a complex network depending on drinking water, recreation, fishing, and a host of activities. But I guess to Brian's point, anytime you have a question, just check with DEC and they'll be happy to answer your question.
Okay, the next one's from Carrie. In Larchmont, the Sheldrake River, already in a flood zone, runs well within the 100-feet setback of many single-family homes. Will they require jurisdictional determination requests if the owner wishes to do any work there?
I think for the first, so we got to realize that like Kelly said, there's been John said, there's been over about 8,000 JD requests statewide. So, but I think the first thing that I've been trying to do is say, okay, what activity are you doing? Is that something that's is the ordinary maintenance, or is that something that is going to be disturbing new land, building a new structure, and require a permit? So, I think if you are in the middle of an urban area and you kind of look around and there's sidewalks, parking lots, and buildings for 100 feet in all directions, then you probably don't need to get a jurisdictional determination. But if you're even if you're in an urban area and you look over and there's a patch of undeveloped land right next to you, then that might need a JD because there might be a reason why that area hasn't been built on yet. And for things that are a large scale projects, I mean, oftentimes we have, especially in Southern New York, municipal permitting also. So a lot of people are already hiring consultants to do local wetland work. So they can wrap the jurisdictional determinations up for our DEC along with any taking a look at any potential need for local wetland permitting.
And just to add to the senator's earlier point, since we're talking about the Sheldrake River, if there is work proposed to be done within the bed or banks of that river, and it is jurisdictional for DEC, it may require a different permit from DEC. So best thing to do is always reach out to us.
So the next question is from Nancy, and she wants to know if the first step for a property owner wanting to make a change on their property that's adjacent to a wetlands area would it be to reach out to the municipality for a permit and they'll be redirected to DEC, or reach out to DEC directly?
I would say reach out to DEC directly. As Rob showed, the link and the form, very easily accessible. Put the information in, and that allows DEC to look to determine whether or not we would have jurisdiction and what areas we have it in.
Thank you. And the last question that I have on here is, how are these regulations enforced? If there is a violation, is there a remediation process, and how is that overseen?
So I can take that, Rob and Brian. That's really the other end of the work that Brian and his team do. They are out in the community, both working with projects that are constructing, but also looking at permits that we've issued or other properties that may have needed a permit and didn't get one. We look at what has happened, and we determine based on the facts what the appropriate next steps might be. Remediating the wetland all the way to using DEC's authority under the law and regulations to enforce violations.
Thank you. Okay, I don't see any other questions from the audience. Does anybody in the group have any last comments they'd like to make?
Well, Vlora, first, I want to thank you and Alex for pulling this together. I thought this was a great exchange, and thank you again for your membership, being so interested in this. I want to thank my partner, Assemblymember Slater, and to all the great team at DEC. And I guess the last thing I want to say, we talked a lot about the environmental importance of our wetlands and protecting our wetlands, but we heard a lot from DEC. And even if you go through the process and you have check, 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 that doesn't mean you can't build. That just means they have jurisdiction and a permit may be necessary. And a permit may just simply be a look at your plans and they say, okay, that's good. Or is there a more sensitive way we can help you achieve your goal? So just because a permit's necessary does not mean it's the death knell to your project or your development. And so, we believe that protecting our environment and economic development are both possible. We need both. And so we also know that there's some dislocation at the beginning of any new process. And that's why conversations like this are so important. So just want to thank everybody. And this has been terrific. Thank you.
If I can just echo the senator quickly, I just want to thank DEC for joining us, as well as Vlora and her great team for putting this on. This came out of a conversation I was having with Vlora and Alex just about the implementation of the law. And so I hope you found it as informative as I did. I think it's very important for us to understand how DEC is going to implement the law, and I think they did a great job explaining it. Obviously, if there are suggestions or recommendations that you have, please do not hesitate to relay those to us so that we can collaborate together to either troubleshoot a solution or find a more permanent answer to what you may be experiencing. But I just want to reassure everyone that we are here to work together, that we are here to make sure that the processes in place are there for a good reason, and that DEC is well equipped to assist anyone with any issues that they're having. And so, again, I want to thank everyone for joining us. I do want to thank Senator Harckham for providing the institutional knowledge and history behind the legislation and his expertise as the chair of the Environmental Conservation Committee in the State Senate. And again, I hope you found it as informative as I did. And Vlora, thank you very much for helping us organize this.
Thank you. Thank you, Matt. Our friends at DEC, you have any last words?
I would just like to echo providing us the opportunity to share the information we have with your community and our constituents, and we are always here to answer questions, to assist in the process. As the senator mentioned, just because we have jurisdiction over a wetland doesn't mean a project is dead. It just means that it will require a permit. And the earlier you reach out to DEC as you are developing plans for that permit, the easier it is for us to work together to ensure that the environment will be protected and the project can move forward. That's the balance we're looking to achieve.
Thank you for that. The realtor community, of course, wants housing to be accessible and affordable for as many New Yorkers as possible. So that's important to know. I appreciate that. I'd really like to thank everyone on this call, DEC, Senator Harckham, Assemblyman Slater, who, yes, so this entire conversation really came out of a conversation that Matt and I were having a few months ago. But I think everybody here really brought a lot of clarity to a complex and evolving topic. And these changes are kind of a big deal to people who aren't very familiar with them, right? And a lot of times fear really comes from misunderstanding. So I think these conversations are always important so that we can take the fear out of situations and let people move forward in a healthy manner. Um, and I think it's especially critical that this is open to not just the realtor community, but to homeowners and concerned residents. And I hope we can do more events like this. I really want to thank our legislative partners for always being willing to have conversations with us and move things forward. We are not just real estate agents, we are homeowners, we are renters, we are taxpayers. So it's very important in a wide range of ways that we continue having these very important conversations. So Alex will be sharing some follow-up resources that Rob provided us today, including maybe those slides, Rob, if you'd be willing to share them. I think they would be very helpful. And I really want to thank everyone who took time right before the holidays to join our session today and listen to what all of these brilliant people had to say. And I look forward to the next conversation. So thank you all.
Thank you,
Happy
everyone.
holidays, everyone.
Happy holidays.
Happy holidays.
Take
We'll
care.
get this
Happy
information out
holidays.
to everyone. Thank you. Bye.